What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of Epic Conversations. And I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner. 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And I host the only online show in the world for fathers and dads. It's sponsored by Dove Men Care. It's also co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. And I am the board chair for the Global Food and Drink Institute and initiative. Sorry, let me get that right. And what they do is it is the multimedia not-for-profit that is based in Oakland, California. That's mission is to spotlight Blacks in diaspora, Blacks in the diaspora. I'm having some technical mouth difficulties today. Diaspora that are doing their thing in food, wine, and travel. As always, most nights on Saturday. I'm a little bit out of it today. Most Saturday nights, because there's a conversation, and now I can't even talk about the conversation before. That's TMI. But most Saturday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, we have two illustrious women, Aisha K. Staggers and Jill Jones, and they host State of Things. That's the first time I can say it at the beginning of the conversation. State of Things. And they are ready. And here we have them. And and Aisha and I did not plan the red thing. Okay, so stop right there, people.
I wish you guys would have told me.
You know what? You know what? Next, we'll have to plan a color coordination.
Yes, definitely.
But it's all right. How's things going, ladies?
Okay. So far.
All right.
Yeah, it's been
so far so good. Hey Jen, how are you? Hey Chris, how you doing?
Chris.
Hey, how we doing? How's the week been?
For us, for me,
Yeah.
I've been pretty busy this week, but with regular stuff. So maybe it wasn't as busy. I think the politics I thought it was a little slow, I thought it was a little bit slow, which was okay with me. It was kind of like normal news.
But your buddy's talking tonight in Ohio.
I know. But he has three people who aren't going to show up. Governor DeWine, the Attorney General, and I believe Senator Portman not going.
Well, that means that three people will get attacked on Twitter tomorrow or tonight, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But yeah.
The feeder's broken, right?
Oh, yeah. And want to say thanks to everyone. There is a pile of people already jumping in, and we appreciate that on the live. Thank you so much. We appreciate your support. Black Beauty is in the house.
Hello.
Birdie Lynn TV is in the house.
Hi, Birdie
Keep
Lynn.
the comments flowing. And Birdie, when you coming back? We want you back. And I reached out to Dr. Tachi this week. I'm looking forward to getting her back on a conversation also.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
She and I get heated a little bit. We
Oh,
always do it somehow. We're going good. And then, no, it's good. It's all good.
Okay.
It's just nice to have different opinions, and you learn something when people come on. You start to, evaluate your own opinions.
Okay, good. Because I don't want to get you and Dr. Tachi on up. No, I can't afford that.
No, she's wonderful.
I can't afford that now. Stop that. Behave.
Who challenges my thinking.
Yeah, she is. She's a really good deep thinker.
Mm-hmm.
She's a really good deep thinker. Absolutely. Well, she shows how you can have intellectual conversation. You may not always disagree, but it's handled respectfully.
Oh, totally.
We've had some,
and Birdie Lynn goes,
great guests.
Yeah, both ladies are too classy. Oh, there you go. Birdie Lynn giving the hearts up already. All right. So let's get it going, folks. We have another, even though it may have been slow politically, there is things going on especially in America. So let's talk about this catastrophe in Miami and this building that collapsed. And from what I've seen just recently, there's been 5 people have been pronounced dead, but over 100 people are still missing.
159 are still missing.
Wow.
I mean, what's really interesting is that number hasn't changed in the last
No.
day and a half, and it kind of is worrisome. I know today they mentioned they were having problems. They were pumping oxygen into the underground areas, hoping if people were still alive, they would have access to breathing. And but fires started to brew a little bit because you had the electric car batteries and the oxygen and all of that. Just kind of it's just not looking very good for many.
Let me ask, from where I'm sitting,
I can't even imagine how many pets have died in this too. Their whole everything.
But is this story really as much? Is it me? But should this story be getting more coverage? I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe it's me. I don't feel it's getting a lot of coverage.
I don't know. I mean, you think so, Aisha?
I don't think it's getting a lot of coverage, but I think because media is the way it is, and so the body count is what drives up the coverage. And because there is no body count over, not even into the double digits yet, even though there are still 150 people missing, you've got news producers who don't think it's meritorious enough to warrant a full 3-minute news story until there are 150 plus people identified. And then that's going to take long, because we saw how long it took for them to identify the victims of the 9/11 attacks.
Yeah. I think that there's also a little bit of touch and go, because I can imagine, how do you report when you don't know who to blame? I know there are reporters trying to figure out different variables. There have been some people who attested that there was an engineer, obviously, who said he had tested years ago in the soil that it's sinking along these coastal areas. And that's really true, though. I mean, the sea levels have been rising. We've had some crazy things with the Antarctica thing. Ice is melting. What do people think is going to happen? I can tell you that my uncle had an incredible beach house here in Malibu ages ago when I was growing up in the 70s, and there's hardly any land. There's, it's not the same. It erodes. It's just what happens. And I think that unless the journalists know what direction to go in, because I think DeSantis is worried, because, everyone is like, how can this happen here? And of course, it looks like a lot of people are getting ready to go down the conspiracy route, that it looked like it was blown up. It looks like whatever. And I really don't know what happened to it, but I can say that just the infrastructure in America per se, on a whole, is horrific. And, I don't see any inspectors anywhere, not in California, not in New York. I never, they've kind of hemmed that up in the local, regional aspects. And I think that giving certain developers a pass, I did see some really weird connection that someone was trying to make between the next city over, which is called Little Moscow, and whoever, I don't know what they were going down, what road everybody's going, but everybody's just pointing fingers at the moment, and it's really tragic. But it doesn't surprise me, because I think developers get a pass on a lot of things. Building on swampland is not a good idea. And if I lived along that whole area, I'd be worried. I'd be very worried. Because now it's not like you don't have they're telling people to go and try to find another place to stay. But the reality is you can't even sell that. I mean, that is just trashed. It's done. It's coupled with the horrific deaths that go on. Airbnb might be involved somehow. You got to remember, people always Airbnb their places. I mean, can you freaking imagine once they figure out everything and all the little details in here, Mm-mm.
I mean, I'm hoping that a lot of the people had insurance. It was probably required by the company, but it's going to be difficult to put lives back together. People who have passed away, it's going to be difficult for their families to reclaim them and to be able to mourn them. But one of the things that I'm wondering is what we're going to talk about him later, but what is DeSantis doing? Because I mean, this is a disaster for which he
Did he
actually
even go there, or did he
no,
go?
no,
Wow.
not to my knowledge, but this is a disaster for which you actually call out the National Guard because you need bodies to help find those people.
No,
I
he's
mean,
sending them to Texas, remember?
exactly to go investigate the wall and check out all of
Right.
this. And it's like, well, where are the people, the bodies that you need to like literally dig through rubble because apparently putting oxygen through is not getting it because fires keep popping up. So you're going to need people who manually can like dig through, and you're going to need people with equipment. He's not even ordering equipment. I mean, this is happening in his own backyard, and Miami
He's
is not only
useless.
a hot residence. Yeah, it's not only a hot residence place, particularly for people who are retired, but I mean, this is the first summer that people are really back traveling. And Miami is a hot vacation spot. There are a lot of things in Miami. And so this does not look good or bode well for the city of Miami. And isn't the mayor Republican?
Aren't they all down there?
It's
Except
like,
in Miami, I'm not sure.
Because it's like, and if it's not a Republican stronghold there in Miami, then that also needs to be the question to DeSantis. Like, why are you not providing the assistance that needs to be done? I mean, there are things that you have in your power to do as governor.
Well, these places, if COVID isn't going to kill his campaign coming up, this might just do it. The fact of his, the avarice and greed of these politicians, they're also down for, jumping in there and going after their money by hook or crook. And then when there's an actual moment to do something that you're expected to do as the governor, provide help and assistance, they don't. Couldn't do it during COVID. This obviously is another part of his depravity as a human being. If people vote for that monster again, then that's their own. Then they're on their own, because there's no excuse for this. You have little children who were lost, and there should have been so many people out there coordinating the efforts. But I do believe we are going to find out that the buildings department and divisions like that are corrupt, and somebody turned a blind eye to what was going on. They said that the building was supposed to be taken care of in the next month or so. It was supposed to be they were starting work on it. But I don't really believe that's true. I think that I don't know. That's lip service, because the reality of it is, if it was supposed to begin next month, then somebody would have already been there to see what dire condition it was in, and probably said, we need to evacuate this side of the whole building. But this is a condominium as well. So if they were having meetings every month, the owners, have their meetings. We will, I guess, discover what was being said in those meetings if they can get a hold of that, to find out just in fact what was that. I don't think this was a rental. It was a condominium that belonged to those people, were the homeowners of these places.
And I'll be curious to see what the banks get back from this. What kind of payouts the banks get in making these claims, and when the banks start making these claims, because are the banks going to get bigger payouts than the actual people who lost their property and lost their homes?
Yeah, and if there was a guy in 2000, if there was an engineer who evaluated it in 2018 with all the storms that they have, typically you would imagine, you send an engineer out there every single time you have avoided a hurricane or whatever. I don't know. We're at a really weird time in our history of this country of not holding people accountable and them just doing their jobs. But there's more, as Dr. Vibe said, there's more to this that's very dark and probably, passing the buck.
Well, I'm just going to interrupt because, as usual, our great audience, our live audience is giving great commentary. Chris is saying a building erected in 1981 should have been inspected regularly given the age of the structure. It will be interesting to see the record showing the frequency of the structural inspections done.
I agree.
Yeah.
Jen saying so sad for all the people and all the pets.
I know. Heartbreaking.
Chris saying DeSantis, the original quote, nowhere man, unquote.
Yeah, he's disgusting.
Black Beauty, good point, Jill, Aisha and Jill, as why the governor of Florida hasn't requested for more help.
Yeah.
But knows exactly when to do when they want to push, Birdie Lynn says, which is true.
Absolutely.
On the Periscope, I agree with Jill. When there's structural issues, someone is usually sent to investigate. And notices are issued to tenants.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if
I believe that if the parents knew that it was in that condition, they would have left. Why would you keep your kids there?
Yeah, there's a big negligence going here somewhere. It'll be interesting to see. Go ahead.
Well, if they were planning to do this big, reconstruction, like
where was the scaffolding?
Exactly. If they had been inspecting 2018, clearly.
Where's 2019, 2020, 2021?
Right. But clearly they saw some damage in 2018 that let them know that they needed to do some kind of repairs and reconstruction.
Mm-hmm. And then we have these idiots online who freeze the frame of when it fell and go, there's 2 lights here. There's electricity, you dimwit dummies. I mean, this is, I worry because if idiots that we now know exist in our society, can you imagine any of those same idiots who work construction and can't even read plans or can't even do, this is why it's falling down. We got the dumbest people in this country.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very interesting because they will call into account, whoever had their hands on that building, whether on HVAC, any kind of repairs going on at all. But for it to snap like that, even with the sinking, that's one thing. But this is why you call in scientists and you call in it goes beyond an engineer at that point. You don't just sit around and, when did he go home? What did he do with that information? Did anybody find out what happened? His due diligence, it didn't irk him that no one was paying attention to this, that he said it's sinking. I'm sorry, give me more with this story. Because if he's the last man who checked it, he's going to be the first one to go down. No pun intended.
He will be the scapegoat.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be the scapegoat.
That's what I mean.
But they got to follow the line because obviously he was not the only one that saw that report.
No, he wasn't. But he's too afraid, apparently, to start running his mouth. Because I certainly would. I'd be singing like a bird. Yep. I'd be whistling
imagine
Dixie.
all those lawsuits that he's going to face personally.
Because the chain of command would be you're at the DOB. Then that means certain things can't even get done. Certain deliveries, certain anything. The weight of anything in that structure becomes compromised. So what are you saying? Oh, this is going to be, I just really was just hoping they would find more people alive or that there was some gully that they fell in but it doesn't really look good and it doesn't feel good either.
Yeah.
No.
And now I just pray that they didn't suffer because all this bumbling, that dumb DeSantis has done nothing to get all hands on deck, where they could have maybe saved more people.
Right.
You know, DeSantis is a liability, and he should be sued personally for incompetence. How many people has he killed now in his state? I mean, seriously, he just doesn't care, and he really doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
The folks, the name DeSantis will be coming up a little later in our conversation. So he's not, he's, I guess he's on the front bumper and the back bumper of our conversation tonight. Put it, I guess we can put it that way, you know? So, but yeah, certainly a huge tragedy. And I just think it should be reported more. I don't know why it isn't. There isn't a lot. There is a lot going on news-wise, but I would think something like this, especially in lieu of how much conversation it is in American government about infrastructures.
I've seen a lot of it on last night. Like, I saw a lot of it. Okay. And I just think that there are people standing in the same place they were standing 2 days ago, and they're still saying 4 or 5 dead, 159 missing. And all we're going to see right now are hysterical family members, and how, you know, I don't even believe that DeSantis has sent a team of people, you know, in trauma situations to be there. I know that Joe Jonas went and delivered pizzas at the hospitals and whatever, or on site, but there needs to be some psychiatrists or therapists there, counselors. Can't hear you.
Just trauma, a lot of people going through a lot of trauma. And, you know, think about it, we've just come, well, maybe Florida didn't go through it as much. We've just spent 12 to 14 months going through a pandemic. And now those people now have to go through this.
Right.
Well, I mean, here's the other thing too, is you were asking about infrastructure. Most Americans' understanding of what infrastructure is very basic, and only pertains to roads and highways and things of that nature. They don't realize that infrastructure also includes our pipelines. Now, and I don't mean our pipelines as in gasoline pipelines, because it includes those too. But I mean our pipelines to our houses that produce our water, our bridges, and our buildings. You know,
we had a bridge collapse in DC the other day.
Yeah.
You're muted, Dr. Vibe.
I did read that, and it's actually interesting because where I live, they're actually changing the water pipes in the whole area, and those are the original water pipes from 1950.
Yeah. And they've got the sewers and all of that stuff. All of that.
We haven't changed anything in this country infrastructurally wise. I don't even know how long it's been. It's like, I don't even remember it in my whole lifetime here. Nothing, you know, every now and then.
On during the Obama administration where they got that big infrastructure bill. But again, that it still wasn't enough money. And those projects that those were part of the workforce. And
also the state steals the money and they do what they want. The Republicans were notorious for not delivering on what those legislative terms were. I'm sure if we went back, we'd find that they didn't.
And that was the worst part. That was the worst part, because he did get that money, and then after the guard changed hands from Democratic control to Republican control,
they're like, forget it,
and they changed the rules.
Party
they changed the rules of who could get the money, and so people, you know, they were giving the money and things to their friends, and you know, to do projects that just never came to fruition.
And to build a wall at the border that never gets built.
Right.
Oh boy. Again, live audience, they keep on coming in tonight. So folks, keep on coming in, keep on making your comments. I'm monitoring. Got something here. Neptune Nymph says, between this and the remains of indigenous children being recovered, I feel like leaving the earth. We will be talking about that second story a little bit later on in our conversation tonight. Also, Chris is saying there was a story today about a young boy who took the initiative to bring water and snacks to the responders in Miami. Really heartwarming. A young boy does that. Yet DeSantis does nothing about nothing. That speaks volumes.
DeSantis is a cold piece. I mean, he is, and when people in Florida finally get the balls to tell him to go screw himself, I would imagine they should all be up in arms right now, and they should all be telling him to go to hell, because Chris is right. There were children who had more decency and more thought to be caring and kind. And this DeSantis is the most, depraved human being. And if that's who Florida wants to represent them, then they can all go to hell, in my opinion.
I mean, for what all he ended up.
They need to do more. They're sitting back and they're doing nothing. Their citizens think it's party time and whatever. Get up and do something. He should have been removed from office. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I don't give a damn anymore about these term limits. People need to be removed if they're not doing what they need to be doing. And it looks like we're just going to have to fight all the time with the most inhuman pigs that are holding political offices. Shun their kids. Start doing things. Start creating life the way they want us to be miserable. Create their misery. Make them miserable. Your kid has a play date with one of their kids. No, I'm sorry. We don't like you anymore. Bye. I don't care. At the grocery store, no. I don't want you to have this. This is mine. You want to buy this table? I'm not selling it to you. It sounds so childish that I even have to think this way. But I don't know anymore than to say, why have we attracted such vulgar people in our government? They're vulgar. They're just hideous. They're hideous. I wouldn't wipe my with any of them.
One of the things is that for all of his personal things that he believes are flaws, Andrew Gillum was the better choice Florida had, and that you can't not acknowledge that when you see disaster after disaster happen in Florida. When they had a choice, they chose the white nationalist governor who just wants to collect the salary but do none of the work and get all of his praise from Donald Trump. I mean, and also you have to remember there was a lot of fixing with the ballots and how people voted, and what how many voting places we're going to put in certain areas. And we also had that conversation at that time about the Latino community that was in Florida and the impact that they had on getting DeSantis elected. We had that conversation on this show.
And yet, here's the crazy thing. They hate Mexicans. They hate Latinos. But the Latinos who think they're in the hierarchy in the pecking order, well, I'm not Latino. I'm a Cubano. I'm a light-skinned Cuban. Bloop-de bloop-de bloop. I'm going to be Republican. That is the stereotype, isn't it? That is the thing. That is what we have. But I'll tell you one thing. Everybody needs to vote. If you don't go in your regions or your locales, you get zipped. Right. I can't even imagine that the people, what their personal life choices are like, if they let stuff like this go on. What the hell are they having? What's happening in their lives? How could you let somebody mistreat you like this? DeSantis mistreats people. He craps all over his citizens, and they like it. They drink it like it's Kool-Aid.
Okay. We'll save it because we're going to be ending off with him. So I don't want you to use up all empty out of the tank before the. Go ahead.
There is this thing that Joe makes a very good point when it comes to voting. There are a lot of states that have not just not just the midterms coming up by 2022. There are a lot of states and cities that have mayoral governors. Mayoral elections. They have gubernatorial races before 2022. You have your state reps and all of those some of those before 2022. So, people really need to pay attention to what's coming down the pipe this year when it comes to voting, and then next year, because
and mainly, let me
those
just
things
say
are going
this.
to change.
Let's
things.
just be for real. People of color. I don't care
Yeah.
if you can't get off of work. Figure it out. It's not the end of the world. I've done it. We've all done it.
Yeah.
Save that day.
Yeah,
Get
it's
off.
these elections
Go
that they depend
it's your
on.
civic duty. And it's very incredibly irresponsible for you not to do it. Somebody made a comment on Twitter the other day, seeing somebody holding up a sign when Kamala went to the border saying Kamala. And, Kamala is like, how mean, whatever. First of all, I wasn't too convinced if it wasn't just anyway, I'm going to pass on that. But somebody said, nothing worse than seeing, it's just bad to see Trump people, period, holding signs that Heritage Foundation created. But it's even worse to see an ethnic person holding it. So they wanted to call this person a racist and whatever. But I had to say, I agree. You must look, what kind of fools people look like supporting this stuff. And DeSantis, it's absolutely, you're right, Aisha. He's disgusting.
And you really have to just make the point to vote in these elections, because those are the people who will make these decisions, these decisions as to whether or not to call on National Guard should there be a tragedy such as this. You're going to have your mayors and your state legislators. They're the people who are going to make particularly your state legislature. They're going to make it hard, along with your governor, for you to even get out to vote in 2022, because the federal government is not going to be able to catch up in time.
I've never seen a politician, not since the days of Trump, but I never ever saw a politician, Republican or Democrat, who just went, I'll get to it tomorrow. Oh, really? Okay. Right. Yeah, they can take care of that. The regular fire department can do that. Yeah, it'll overwork the team. Yeah, it's all right.
Well, I'll get
considering
to it
that. But right. And firemen and first responders are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder as it is. If anybody else needs to be there, if it's therapists and counselors, it's for them too, because scraping a baby off of a piece of concrete smashed between two bricks is not going to do very well, DeSantis. It's going to really turn you. And that's what you should have to be out there helping doing. DeSantis's fat should be out there helping them brick by brick. He's so above it all. And I think it's time we demand our leaders to get up out of their little chairs and move their and do something, because that is going to just disturb. You wonder why they may not be showing it on TV, because they don't know what they're going to find. And whatever cameraman catches it will just tip this whole right all the way over. We're in such a horrible time. And you know who set the tone for not giving a GAF? GAF. Trump, what he did to Puerto Rico. Let's not forget. But it looks like Florida forgot. They still have DeSantis. And Trump, if he ever threw a roll of paper towels at me, it'd be the last roll of paper towels he ever threw. But he would have gotten those towels back. Remember that? I thought that was heinous. You throw something. What?
I go back to George W. Bush after 9/11, and everybody witnessed the horrors of that and got to live with it for a minute, was like telling the press, please don't show this anymore. Please stop showing this. And that allowed people to get a more rosy view of the news and to be desensitized. Because remember, during Vietnam, what got people to really see the horrors of Vietnam, what got people to really see what was going down around the country with regards to civil rights, was seeing it on TV and seeing
Life magazine
horrors and Life magazine, and seeing the actual horrors as they occurred in real time. And when we had a president that said this is too much for people to see. Show different things. Don't show as much. And the news organizations went along with it.
That's
We
true.
started not seeing those things. And so,
And
for example,
it's a good thing
maybe
they don't
America
have
needs
smell-o-vision.
to see. Exactly. Maybe America needs to see these people, these workers getting bereft on live TV when they find a foot or overcome by the smell of dead bodies clustered in one place.
Because that smell from 9/11, they could take it off TV, but and that's when I hear the rest of middle America and these stupid patriots who are like, oh my God, these overzealous Trumpers. I'm like, you weren't even in New York. Go sit down. Sit down. I was there. The smell of it was something I will never forget. Never. Yeah. It lingered. It would be in your hair walking down the streets. It lingered. So you know what?
That smell traveled this way.
And I feel the people on the East Coast had a right to, to kind of step to a few of those who want to be there and talking all big and bad. And we had first responders who are no longer here, who risked their lives and their safety and their health. What's going on in this building? They don't even know why it fell. So what are they going to come down with in the next couple of years? Are they going to be dead from some kind of lung disease? Exactly.
Remember.
So for me, it's like the like Dr. Vibe said, the lawsuits coming are, I hope it breaks.
The lawsuits, not the suits.
Yeah. I hope this goes on DeSantis's record. One has already been filed, but it should break the state. So it has to come begging back to Joe Biden for some help.
So let's catch up here. Real Django. Jill is on fire. You think? Chris is saying, true, Jill. And worse yet, these people are spawning new generations of the same evil, heartless ilk. It gets me twisted too. And he also says, absolutely, Aisha. So
Aisha's the level-headed one here. Just keeping me steady.
Really? Really? Okay. Really? Okay. Sure. So here's the funny thing. Could you imagine, Aisha, if you didn't show up 1 week, what Jill would be like? Ooh. Don't want to think about that. All right, let's not think about that right now. Well, keep the comments coming up, live audience. It is a great one, and let's move to another interesting situation: the Derek Chauvin sentencing, which happened yesterday. 22 and a half years in prison for the murder of George Floyd. Ladies, thoughts?
Well, on one hand, it's very rare that you see even this sentence. I was watching a documentary earlier today about the 3 civil rights workers who were killed in 1964, and that they didn't even charge the men for murder because the state of Mississippi wouldn't do it. And so those men got charged on a civil rights violation, and the most one of them got was 10 years. So on one hand, this is progress. On the other hand, he should have gotten the whole 40. That family is going to not have any contact with George. At least his mother was, his mother will get to see him. His family will get to see him. They'll get visits. They'll get letters. And cheers to Van Jones up on CNN talking about how he felt bad for Chauvin's mother. What's wrong with you, man? Climb out the Kardashian, you know what?
I don't know what's going on.
I mean the P word.
Yeah, it's. I think that, of course, we feel very bad for George Floyd's family. But why George Floyd was he is the symbol of this, is because his demise really is America's demise. That was, he took it all the years of abuse that Black people have suffered in this country, it was all present at that moment. So, you know, it was so karmic. And I'm not making him a martyr or a saint, but, you know, I really do believe that there was some kind of divine, we're supposed to really learn from this. And I think it was a turning point. And those that don't get it it's not going to be good for them.
So Jill, you bring up a good question. Do you think America has learned from this?
No, because I think we're at a point now. You know, it's funny, before we came on the air, I was watching, PBS has an amazing program right now about mental health. It's a whole series about what is mental health, who decides what mental health is. It speaks about the things that they would do in the 1840s with Black people, which I never knew this, something called Daptopia or something, where basically slaves who were released from, they were made free. Another trick that the white people had was, and this show is not about a race thing, it's just about mental health. But one thing that happened on the evolution of how we've gotten here is that slaves who came up north, well, the North had its own little way of fixing them N-words. It was to make them be deemed insane. And so if you look if you're part of Ancestry.com or you're 23andMe, then you can go and look, and up in the corner, like there should be something about insane, you know, in the long sheet that was filled out. They used to make Black people be considered insane so that they could lock them up. And that was another trick that was perpetrated to say, oh, they can't make it. They don't know how to function outside of, you know, being told what to do. And there were some who had mental issues, partially because there was some inbreeding that had happened. There were some, you know, there were some that did have mental issues with birth because their moms and dads were brothers and sisters and were being forced to have sex with each other. So we had some issues. We also had issues. That's what they did. So for me, it's like to see that we've come to this point with, it hasn't learned anything, but we can evolve. But I really do feel that we're at a point now where society gets to decide, just as we get to determine what are behavioral norms, which I do believe that's what this whole fight is about with the Democrats and the Republicans. What are the behavioral norms? And that's what we're fighting. We don't feel that this is right to discriminate against people because of their color or to hold them back systemically. This is who the Democratic Party is today, and the progressive parties. I don't give a damn what you want to think about what it was before, because it isn't that now. This is what we are. So I guess in answer to your question, I feel that this is an important step for us to start making some with our own actions. I do believe in shunning people. I know Joe Biden thinks you can get along with people, but I know that when you don't let people come to your party and after a while you're happy and you're having a really good time and they just are outcasted from just sort of civil-minded, healthy-minded people. When certain people sit down at the table and you know they're just freaking twisted, just excuse yourself and leave. They'll get the message. I think it's important to do that for a while. I think we are wearing white and they will just get us all dirty. You know, they're dirty people. They're filth. So you can't, what is it? Bad associations spoil useful habits. They're filth. And I think our behavior has to be more supportive of each other and moving people forward. It's like when I go on about, I know we're upset about the voters' rights, but the reality is we got to really pay attention to the fact that they're changing the legislation with the electoral parts. That is the most. They got us all hooked up on, oh, they're going to let us know we can't vote. What they're really doing is making it where they'll get the final say. in the state to go in and local levels and change it. So we have to be so on top of everything, and we can evolve, just like how I was explaining how the mental health thing, it changes. We get to set as a society what the behavioral norms are, and they're not normal.
Okay.
Republicans, sorry about that.
No problem. Just to catch up before I get you in, Aisha. Neptune Nymph saying it's true. If an enslaved person wanted to leave, they were labeled maniac. And then Chris says, personally, I would have preferred to see him sentenced 30 to 40 years, 22 and a half, better than probation. That would have been a total miscarriage of justice. This is a start. I hope it is the beginning of true change. Aisha?
One of the things I was going to say was that even though this is progress, it's not going to be taught. And that's not going to be taught, because that is what, and let's be clear, what's critical race theory versus what's history. They've worked them on the true definition of what critical race theory is. They've now told on themselves. And so now they're very clear in not actual history, that they don't want actual history taught. So this thing that is also, it could have been 30 or 40 years. It probably should have. But the fact
it could still be when the federal charges come in.
Right. But it could also, the fact of this is that there was this victory, and it will not be taught as such, or it will not be taught at all. It will be pervaded in terms of how it will be taught.
Watch out. Jill's ready with something, and I'm going to say interesting. I wonder how Republicans would want George Floyd's killing put in the history books.
History books don't matter anymore, you guys. It's TikTok. Right. Do you know they're teaching sex education on TikTok? Parents don't want to have this. This is unfortunately where we're going. People are not reading. This is what's happening. They'll be discounted anyway. I've seen, for what it's worth. I mean, there's white kids who know about Tupac, Biggie, all of these, guys that have spoken some really amazing truths that lifted up MLK, that have done things that have spoken about our history. Maybe some of them went off the brink a little with their conspiracy stuff, but maybe it wasn't conspiracy. But at the same time, I do believe that because of social media, we'll all figure out a way how to be incredibly creative in how to get the information out. Because the minute you start denying your children anything, they start looking for it. So they're doing a problem. They've blown it sky high, that even kids who never even have this much brain capacity to even ever go to law school are sitting up there like, oh, what's critical race theory? And you're like, oh, okay, But it opened up something where there might be a few in there who said, oh, I think I'm going to go and study sociology, or I'm going to go and do this, or we don't know. This is just the path they took, but they're kicking up a lot of dust. And I think it just backfires. They're the ones screaming. When they're dead, their kids will be the ones still dealing with it.
So let's go back to Derek Chauvin, the sentencing, the impact on America. Like, it sounds like both you think it's not had a big impact on America.
Well, I also know that they changed the court for the other three, the trial it's not going to be in August anymore. It's going to be next year. So that was interesting. But no, it hasn't changed anything, because we still have to root out what's happening in our countries regionally, in our local capacity. We have a guy out here in LA who was beaten senseless. Thank God there were two girls who took the video of him. Good looking guy. And they almost deformed his whole face. He, kicked him in the police officer kicked him in the face. I mean, this is what we see every day, and it cannot become normal. It cannot, and it will not become normal. The saddest part of it all for the police officers is, I don't think anybody, can be a police officer for the most part. Most of them. It seems like it's an impossibility for anybody, an American male, to be a police officer. They have too many hangups. I'd like to think there's a few that are good, but unfortunately, the other ones have dragged it down.
Go ahead.
One of the things I think too that the impact, the feeling of the impact, was to a lesser degree than was maybe the verdict, was probably because in people's hearts and minds, they were thinking that this guy, even though he was convicted, probably won't get a whole lot of time or won't get the full sentence.
That's true. So you're right.
Yeah.
I have a feeling he won't spend all that 22 years.
Well, once the federal charges come in, that's going to be another. That's interesting because these may get reduced, but it doesn't mean that the federal years will.
So let me ask you both, ladies, especially Jill, you don't feel that's had a big cultural, historical impact on America?
I think for well, I mean, if you want to look at it in a broad definition, yeah, we're all fighting like crazy because it really defined who's at what base. Okay, if we go there, yes. I also see people struggling for why can't it go back to the good old days, and it never will. They weren't that good. And secondly, that was all shadow living. We were still in the shadows. Everything is being exposed, but I think there's more scabs that are going to be pulled off. I just feel it. And with each pull, I think many people, like white people, are so upset that they have to do some self-reflection. See, my whole thing was, if you call me something, it only is a problem if I respond to it. You know what I'm saying? And that's that old saying, like, you call me that, but they're having really serious struggles with their ideations of their ancestors and how great they were and all this tradition stuff. And I guess I'm not the person because I don't understand that. I didn't have a traditional family. I don't believe it. And that's fairy tale and folklore. And I don't get it. But some white Americans are devastated that, that this is how the rest of the world sees them. And they were the loony ones that came over from Europe. So I don't know. I don't know.
For the first time, they're being held up. A mirror is being held up to them, and they're actually looking at it. Before it was like they were looking at everything else,
right?
But now they're looking at it, and they were looking at it over an extended period of time, which they had nothing. They had no choice but to, really, because everything in the periphery had stopped for a year with the pandemic.
It's like you walked in on them and said the jig is up. Right. Everybody just said, okay, the jig is up. You guys are not happy unless you're pooping all over people. It'll either be the Jewish people, it'll either be the Black people, it'll either be the Mexican people. Like, what next? If the aliens came here, I guarantee they'd be pissed off that they moved in their neighborhood. Yeah. They're bringing the property values down. Oh my God, did you see what's in? Oh yeah, I can see it. Totally. This is how they are, as they've been indoctrinated and live in their little bubbles. And it's really unfortunate. It's just unfortunate.
I think to answer your question though, Dr. Vibe, the murder of George Floyd has had an impact that we probably didn't expect at a time we didn't expect it. But the sentencing, it's only been one day. So I don't even think it's settled in our minds as Black people that this actually was the outcome of this. And two, having the sentencing so far removed from the actual verdict.
The trial.
It actually kind of, like, in people's minds, it was kind of like, oh, we didn't do that part yet? We thought he just went to jail. It was like he went to jail. He got convicted.
Right. And that's the problem here. Everybody here has a short memory.
Yep.
And they're so, like spark plugs. They just go in and out. They don't stay on top of stuff, which leads me back to that whole thing that, people don't finish stuff that they start here.
I like that. Spark plugs. I got to remember to use that sometime. The spark plug analogy. Black Beauty says, my understanding of the Chauvin sentencing is 20 years minimum up to 22 maximum. And unfortunately, this is the norm for sentencing here in the USA. I have a feeling he ain't going to spend 20 years.
They put his sentencing at 22.5 because the most they could have given him was 40. The average that they give on that kind of case is about 22 and a half to 25 years.
And they ask for 30, the defense.
30. Right. He is going to spend that time. What he'll end up doing is exhausting every appeal that he has. Right. But he'll still be in prison while he's doing it. That's the thing. He'll be doing all that
hashtag
in prison.
Hashtag Delco Spark Plugs. Hashtag. All right, let's move on to our next conversation piece. The Democrats cite the Ku Klux Klan Act in suits over the 45 train in Texas bus incident. So for those who don't remember, during the campaign, there was an incident where there was a bus full of Democratic supporters traveling along a Texas highway that almost was run off the road by 45 supporters. Crazy.
This is the problem, is that people do not know the terror of white people, and because they've demonized Black people in this country so much. I grew up in Ohio, and I know these types of people, and they're very scary. They would kill you without thinking twice, and they would dump your body out in the woods and have no problem doing it. It didn't even matter how you grow up. If you try to be, cocky, if you try to be subservient, these people are psychotic, and it's at a whim your life can hang around them. And they are evil, and they've always been, and they live off of hate. So people do not understand this. So when you hear KKK, it's even been watered down. It's been watered down because they're not showing up in the sheets and burning the crosses. And I don't know if because there was such a high level of decency, which is why when somebody would do something like that, you just would go, oh my God, how immoral, how horrible. And now I look and go, because we react so little, is it because our threshold is so low? It's like you go, oh yeah, the Ku Klux Klan rolling up. These guys are bad news. They've been bad news, and they've always tried to get a president in. They tried in the early 1800s, early 1900s. Stevenson, one of them. And if it wasn't for the woman who gave her deathbed confession after she poisoned herself with mercury, they would have had him in. They have not stopped. They have not stopped, and they will continue. And those are Klan people. They just evolved too. They're no longer, like we were talking about mental health. They're not doing lobotomies anymore, but they're still doing some different, and it's bad because now they're in the infrastructure. And this is going to be the hardest part for our government to figure out who is who. I don't even know. Maybe they should all be given lie detector tests. I don't know.
But
we're getting to a time where they're pushing the thing for people needing to have chips. You see, these are the people that in a really weird way are pushing for there being no other recourse but chip technology, because they're really making it an impossibility to live on this planet together.
Yeah, and just for our readers' information, the particular, which this doesn't make history make sense at all. So the actual KKK Act that they're using is the 1871 Act, which in it has a specific clause that if you are using any kind of intimidation tactic to violate people's right to vote, or to affect how people vote, or using anything of that nature, then that is the KKK Act. It's not lost on, it shouldn't be lost on you that they then had to go back and do a 1965 Voting Rights Act, because that there did not contain all of the language that needed to be in place, because the Klan, as we know, did employ those tactics in the 60s, but didn't make themselves obvious enough that they could be charged on that.
Now they're proud of it.
Now they're proud of it. But they also found that 6 of those people involved in that Trump train were insurrectionists. So they get twice the amount of charges. So this is what we're going to find out about a lot of people. For example, we're going to talk about this later, but the FBI wants to find people who were at the insurrection. Go to this rally tonight.
Well, and before we go to break, and periodically I ask both of you this question, so I'm going to let's go back in history a while. Number of years ago, lady was killed at a protest. A gentleman runs a car over a lady at an incident. Mm-hmm. A certain person said there were good people on both sides.
Right.
We have George Floyd. Earlier on this year, we have the Capitol incident. My question is, why aren't many Americans saying there's something wrong with our country?
They didn't do anything when Timothy McVeigh blew up freaking Oklahoma. They didn't care. People, when it doesn't affect them directly, they don't care. There's a heartless bunch of people who are Americans. Sorry, Dr. Vide. And they just ain't right. They ain't right. For the most part, I think people of color might just be the soul of this country. But white people right now are treading very lightly on just like, when you're that entitled, I don't know what's wrong with them. There's a problem. Give a bunch of green dollars in front of them and they'll do anything. But it's gotten really bad. They did nothing. A daycare was blown up, Oklahoma. Then we had the Unabomber. These people go, oh my God, they secretly want to be the guy. That's American white dudes. I want to be, oh my God, he's my idol. How did he do this? You know how much time they futz around trying to figure out what the hell those idiots were thinking of sick-minded individuals were doing? That gives them the biggest hard-ons ever. That's America. I mean, they didn't do it then. That's why it's still here.
Go ahead.
I mean, Dr.
Aisha.
Sorry, Aisha.
That's not a problem. Ask your question in any decade. And the same thing comes up, because there's been a tragic situation in every decade that should have made people like this see. But you got to remember, these people are generational. You know, they are who their fathers were 30 years before, who their grandfathers were 30 years before that, their great grandfathers, and so on and so forth. You're talking about their descendants are the reason we have a Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, and we still need a Voting Rights Act of 2021, a John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and everywhere in between, we've always needed laws of protection against these people.
And wait, we've always had white women with their white women tears idolizing serial killers. They were all over Charles Manson. They wrote him letters. They would go to the courthouse. Sean Penn
One of the Menendez brothers has
the Menendez brothers. The Richard Ramirez. Women used to go in and raise open their with no underwear on to see him. But we've had this, and we have always had this twisted idolatry. This weird, this place, it's one of those places that you're like, maybe it just needs to be tore up from the floor up and rebuilt. Like, we got to sit down and address. These are conversations you just need to sit in a group and go, yo, what is that? And how we've learned to assimilate with all of our sick biases against each other in offices, in buildings, in schools. The biases are there. And slowly over time, it erupted and our decency eroded.
And I'm not saying I'm in Canada. We're not. I'm not saying we're perfect in Canada at all. But I'm just looking. I'm going. Aren't people just sitting, going, you know what? There's something wrong with our country. We need to talk about it.
It's hemorrhaging.
Well, here's the thing. There's always. I can tell you this. I see this at least once a day, but I see it every day on Twitter. Someone asking, "Are white people okay? Are white men okay? Are white women okay?"
But it should be prefaced American white ones, because I'm telling you, it's something about the suburbs they grew up in, I'm telling you, it's them. Like, living abroad, when they would come, people would act like you just, like I said, I used to pretend I didn't speak English. And the British are coming up real close with the American men. They're skirting on up, but for the most part, not all of them.
All right. And Chris is saying, yes, Aisha, entirely a generational issue. Absolutely. So, folks, we are going to take a little bit of a break, because you know what? These ladies need to, I don't think they need to refuel. I think they're already down the straight. They're ready to go. But we're going to take a little bit of a quick break. And when we come back, what are we going to talk about? Oh, this is what we're going to talk about.
My new lipstick.
We're going to talk about 45's organization could face criminal charges in New York next week. So take a break. And if you're watching live, hang in with us. More is to come. If you're listening on the replay or watching the replay, don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment. So, ladies, what is going on?
Just that he needs to get it together.
Sick of that. I am sick of it.
Something is seriously wrong with you.
Why is he still there?
She shouldn't be near Congress.
You need an exorcism, because I don't know what is wrong with you people.
It was so powerful.
And I really wish everybody would stop bowing down to this.
What is he talking about? This makes no sense.
They know they are not the oppressed party, but they love being the superior ones, and they want to flaunt it.
So it was always made political, particularly for people of color and the LGBTQ population.
We end off every episode with a cockroach. This episode's cockroach.
Everything.
Everything?
All the things are going on.
All the things?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's go back at it. So, second half of our epic conversation this evening, we'll start off with 45's organization could face criminal charges in New York next week. I'll believe it when I see it. Ladies, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to kill this.
More power to whoever's going to be in the court, because let me tell you, these people have lined up every step. So you know they've got every I dotted, every T crossed. It's going to be lovely just watching these indictments being handed out left and right. And all. I just want them to do a perp walk. I'm sorry. I want to see a perp walk. Good old fashioned.
I know, right?
Walk. Mm-hmm.
Jill, your thoughts?
Well, I think that I've heard enough media people like going crazy and trying to diminish these charges, sort of like not make them as like ramped up, because that's just the news. But you have to remember there's just strategy involved in getting this forth. And they may not indeed have found the silver bullet to get Trump specifically, but they may have figured out how to rattle his cage and destroy his kingdom or his empire, because it's true, like that one attorney, Daniel Goldstein, said, banks are really funny about indictments. And when they start thinking that you might be getting trotted off somewhere, the thing is, though, they've got to put enough pressure to make the banks get a little nervous and want to call in some of their loans. Unless Putin wants to keep paying, Trump's bills. We'll see how this strategy plays out. It is sort of like a chess game, so I find it fascinating. But the reality is, if they can tear that apart, they could basically destroy the company. And that's all. Donald Trump is nothing without his company.
Right. Yeah, that's going to be interesting, though, because if they can get all the people around him to be indicted on something and charged, those people can pretty much put together the whole puzzle.
Haven't enough people, associates, political and non-political, had to go to jail? He's Teflon.
No, I think this is different, though. This is the actual Trump organization. He's had a lot of his political affiliates be handed charges down. It was all related to his politics. Now you're dealing with his actual money, his actual financial situation, his actual business apart from politics. And so they're gonna find those crossovers where the two meet by indicting these people, and these people are gonna deal, and they're gonna deal on those lines of where Donald Trump can get indicted himself. And what they'll end up having to do is take all the pieces of the puzzle and put the whole puzzle together to put together an indictment for Donald Trump, or at least one of his children. And that is where you'll get the big dog.
Well, it's interesting. I think there's two things that 45 don't want you to mess with: his money and his family.
But here's what's really, I don't know about his family. They said he was really cruel to his father as he was dying. But what I can say, why it's so complicated, because we know that no one's really talked about this either. He's had 6 bankruptcies. So he's also, it's like you've also got to figure out in the middle of all of this, maybe he's indemnified by another person that they are trying to go after. It's like finding the loose thread of the sweater, because he's been so protected. I mean, this is a guy who has gotten out of paying his vendors, and yet, vendors can't even go back in the state of New York and sue him personally. So there is somebody he gets an indemnification for these companies, multiple companies. But I can say that your time runs out eventually. They always called John Gotti Sr. Teflon Don, and eventually his ran out. I don't know if they've got RICO charges on him per se, but that's only because of the way his operating agreements are set up. It doesn't really mean that everything is as so. It's still just finding how to unearth one thing. And I think they need to go after his secretary, because she wrote he didn't have an email account. She wrote it. She needs to be held to the fire for the fact that was she speaking on his behalf, or did she decide to go rogue one day and say something really crazy in an email? I think they need to hold her to the fire. And I think we might see some results.
I mean, we have to remember that they didn't get Al Capone on actual criminal charges related to his businesses. They got him on mail fraud.
Right.
And so this is what they're going to have to do to bring Trump to heel. They're going to have to do something that really brings him down on one of the thing that he prides himself most on is being rich and having businesses. We'll start to take those away from him, and he's nothing.
Right.
Well, Chris has a comment here. Truth to be told, when I heard that indictments may be handed down next week, I admit I was giggling like Betty Rubble. I've heard from a few sources that the CEO bodyguard knows a lot and has been advised to seek legal counsel. And Ivanka and Jared appear to be distancing themselves from 45. So now 45 will really have no issue steamrolling over those two pieces of crooked float, Sam.
That's true. Betty
Yeah.
Rubble. Yeah, I was a little bit like Betty too. I might have been Wilma.
So if you're wanting to have this happen, will 45 do his usual play the delay game and maybe hope that someone can get involved in this or block this from happening? Because
that's the whole thing about this game that Letitia James is playing. She's playing it in New York. She's playing it in a home field that, as long as it remains a Democratic stronghold, as long as she does the indictments and everything, while Cuomo is still governor, there's nobody that can touch this because there's nothing about it that's federal. There's nothing about it that's political. All the local politics are Democratic. So there's not anyone who's going to be willing to bail him out.
But for folks, unfortunately, if you're not watching this, you can only listen to this. Got a big giggle out of both ladies. Chris put hashtag Betty Langford and Wilma Jones.
They sound like a hoot, don't they?
Yeah.
So Letitia's got her hands full, but it sounds like she's playing her cards right.
I told you 2
I think
years
she
ago.
is. I also think
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
I also feel like, setting some kind of precedence with how these developers, there's just too many loopholes just for future notice for different politicians trying to move in, or they got to sew up those loopholes for developers. They pay no taxes, none of them. They build, our allegiance is compromised all the time. The loyalty is to the almighty greenback or the Bitcoin now. And unfortunately, it will destroy this country because there's no integrity. And Trump has proven that. We have to bust up what developers can do. We really do, as they go around buying everybody's houses in America at the moment. We have to stop this because operating agreements of a developer are really tricky, and you can think you have something and you go in there, and because it's an LLC or that was really an LP, it may not be so, and then you can't get them. And he hides behind that. And this is a problem where he's not named as the general partner. He's another thing, and those things, I have to say that I really feel that the judges that have been put in place are not qualified to understand it, and they can't rule on it. In fact, I think most of the bankruptcy judges in New York are idiots. I think they're pretty stupid, and they make a lot of money off of bankruptcies themselves with the filings, and all of the attorneys there, they know it like by rote. It's like going to work at 8, you're in the cafeteria at 11. They know the system. They know how to file. They know what to say, and they're all friends. We're at a point in our country where we are now having to weed out the systems, because they're all systems, whether it's in academia, whether it's in the medical field, there's all systems, the music business, there's systems, and they all need to be destroyed and brought to their knees because they're wrong. And what's happened is when a system doesn't change, it becomes corrupt. It's like if you don't change those sheets, baby, they get dirty.
Yeah, you're going to go back and look at these charges when they're filed, and you're going to see how complicated they are and how detailed they are.
Rudy Giuliani, explain that. Explain Rudy Giuliani, Aisha.
Rudy Giuliani, for example, lost his law license. There was a over here that day. He lost his law license, And he lost it on the back of when he was representing Trump, making erroneous statements and filing claims. I mean, that's not, he pulled in court and the judge said to him, can you tell me what evidence you have? Yeah, I have the evidence. There you go. No, this is not evidence. This is a statement. What is
right?
This is your filing. What is your evidence? But you have it, judge. No, I have your court filing. So they got rid of an incompetent attorney. So now who does Trump hire? He hires an 84-year-old criminal attorney to defend him in Rudy's place. So
who ain't never going to get paid, by the way.
Who's never going to get paid? He still owes Rudy money. Okay, he still owes Rudy money. He still owes all those people who are trying to help him out with the impeachment trials, the first one, not the second one, because he still owes the second one, but he still owes people from the first one. It's like you're going to see the loopholes that there were when you go back and look at these criminal charges. And you're going to see every loophole that Tisha James had to close in order to get a certain piece of evidence against him, and to close in order to get a certain document that led them to a certain person that they can now charge. And it's going to be very specific, very detailed. And when the big bang comes into Trump's life, he's not going to even understand what happened. It's not convoluted.
Yeah. Because let's not forget, the guy that he worshipped the most, Roy Cohn, he faced a miserable death. He got his in a horrible way. Not, and I'm not saying that that was karma or anything. It's just that it was the antithesis of someone who was so mistrustful of people and did some heinous things to other people, always trying to cover his tracks, but was careless in who he decided to pick up one night and have sex with, and just lost it.
And don't worry,
it's like it's interesting.
Get his comeuppance too.
Mm-hmm. Oh my! The man with the great tattooed on his back.
Any man who has a tattoo of both Richard Nixon and Roy Cohn's name is giving me small P energy, like from start to finish. It's like why? That's just but is a turn off to a lot of women.
And also don't forget that Michigan has there's the judge who is calling on July 6th, I believe, all the people who were playing around with the courts, and they want them prosecuted.
Chris is saying
indicted.
So Chris is saying Letitia James, she has this all sewn up. The lady is brilliant.
I hope so, Chris.
He also says, and if Daniel Goldman is involved with Ms. James in this, game over.
Yeah, they would be a formidable team.
And Cinema Canella saying, it is karma, Jill.
Yeah.
Karma, Jill.
Yeah.
So it is going to be.
I told you James wasn't coming to play. She might have been taking her time, but she was taking her time to make sure all her ducks were in a row. She said, if I'm going after a big one, I'm going for the kill.
That's true.
Absolutely.
She must have played a lot of arcade games when she was a kid, because
do you guys get the feeling that after this is done, that do you think that Merrick Garland's going to even last the full 4 years?
No.
Yeah, I don't think he is either.
He sat on the sidelines and waited too long for his shot.
Lacking energy.
He's lacking energy. And the only reason that he's not going to quit and be replaced is because Democrats are trying to see what these midterms are going to flesh out, and to see, if there is a switch on the Senate side in terms of there being more Democrats elected, and they can get over that 10 threshold, and they at least have 7, and they can get 3 sympathetic Republicans, although I don't know who they would be thinking of at the moment to get their person over. They're going to elect someone who's a little bit more progressive, with a little bit more of a spirit.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
All right.
Just not getting the feeling that he's going to, that he's up
I
for
don't
that
think that
whole, kit and caboodle, because I don't think he really knew. He didn't go in like a G, like,
his whole
you're
thing with
fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired. Bye, pack your bye.
But when you
He
learn
should have
about
been
him,
like
you
that.
learn that he was also a former Republican. You learn that he
Mhm.
was also a former Republican. You learn that he's a moderate center left Democrat. The other thing too is that he got the job. He's over it. It's not the job he wanted.
Yeah.
He got a concession.
He missed the
job.
window. Yeah.
He missed the window for him to care. He has none left to give.
He would have been a better judge.
He would have been a better judge. And he got a concession job. And truthfully, the Democrats did not want to pull from the House or the Senate to put someone in place, because Joe Biden had a couple of names like Adam Schiff and people like that, but they didn't want to pull from the House or the Senate during
Adam would have destroyed this thing.
Yeah.
Ooh, Adam is my guy out here in Burbank. That's mine. I'm like, ooh.
So
Adam, every time he walks up, I'm ooh. Jamie, what's his face is cool too.
Merrick's not for it, but I think that if the Dems could get the people that they need, they really need to consider Tish James.
I agree. Let her dust this off. Let's see.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In 2.5 years,
that's what I'm thinking.
That's a very interesting observation. We've got to watch where her career takes her.
Yeah. Oh, she was my lady councilwoman in Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, and I saw at the beginning. So, please, she's gone. She's done quite well. Quite well.
So there could be a game. You think there's a game plan in this?
Ain't no stopping her now. On the move.
Okay, the album. Save it for the album. Quiet. So, all right. Next conversation piece. We said there'd be more, and unfortunately, now there is more. 751 unmarked graves of Indigenous children found at former boarding school in Saskatchewan, Canada. And I live in Canada, so I know the ladies will ask me to get a little bit more involved in this conversation. What is blowing my mind is I just don't think the government is giving it enough attention. Like there's apologies, but the apologies can't get these young people back. Plus the Catholic Church.
Oh, they're acting up again.
Right, like I'm just very disgusted in regards to. I think they need to do more, and you've got to look at it. What this country has done to Indigenous people. It, in a way, and I know in a way, it's almost like this country's this is now just a foot on the neck of Indigenous people.
If people believed in reincarnation, which I do consider, I have a tremendous empathy for all the people of historically. We have hidden and we've depicted people from Indigenous tribes went from Jeff Chandler all the way down to.
I just want to interrupt too. What bothers me even more is that governments have known probably about this for years and
they have, Dr. Vibe, but the problem is the people, the masses. The masses, we have to stop thinking that it's them that have to. We have the voice. We have the voice of the people. Do you really want to know that the coup that happened in Iran and what happened in Guatemala, they were paid. There weren't people on the streets. They were paid. Just like all the things we see, they're paid. So was there ever a time that people actually got up off their and went out in the streets and said, enough of this? The reality is that this has been going on a long time. And what's even more tragic is that people around that time knew that it was happening then, and they said nothing.
I just want to stop for a minute because I just want to catch the comments. First of all, Cinema Canela is going, what? Yes. Christy White is in the house.
Hey, Christy.
Hi, Christy.
Real Janko is saying that's simply horrible. Christy is a member of the indigenous community. She's saying, my mother's a residential school survivor. She was born in 1960.
Right. Wow.
Real Django is saying, it is sickening. Christy is saying her community is devastated. Can I say that again? The indigenous community is devastated.
Well,
Cinema Canela is saying humanity has reached rock bottom. Chris is saying this whole situation, 751 unmarked graves, beyond horrifying. And to echo Jill, this is just another scab being ripped off society's knee. And also, Chrissy, you're with us live. Any sort of additional comments you'd like to give to us, we'd really appreciate it. And we need to have you back on and maybe spend half of one of our segments just getting deeper into this. We really have to
because there's more.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's even more than 751.
Oh, there's much more throughout North America. It's throughout North America.
Oh, yeah. Of course. Actually, we are looking into it. We started our representative. She made a comment about this, and she also made a comment about what it means to be a representative. This has hit her so much. So we are investigating ours too, because we know that there were churches that they found a bunch of babies dead that were abortions and things from Catholic communities. The Catholics, just can't, they just, were the star of the show at one point, right?
Why isn't the Pope saying anything?
Oh, he's a figurehead.
Yet again, it's like, what is he going to say that is going to, first of all, make it better, fix what happened, fix the injustice that happened, and stop it from happening, in the future. He has his people are run amok. Okay, they've been gone. They're shadow Catholics ever since they've been doing things all this time. I mean, this is just one of those gross injustices brought upon innocent people by the Catholics. But we've come to find in recent years they've been doing this all along. I look at this and I'm just, it's a double type of pain that is inflicted on the community and individual families, because those children, a lot of them went just missing with no explanation, none given, and no explanation as to what happened. So they had that tragedy, that initial tragedy, and now the unearthing of these unmarked graves, and now it's like, oh, you mean to tell me this is what happened? And still not having enough information about what actually happened and what all the tragedy was that they suffered.
So I've got here. So Christy's keeping us updated here. They are now going to search in the United States. The church is withholding records.
Of course they are.
Churches in reserves here all of a sudden are burning down.
We had a grandmother who church burnt down. She was an orphan in a native thing. She was saying, and a lot of these children went to school and they never came home. Right.
Yeah. And it's like, it's double the tragedy, because it's like, families who lose someone or someone's missing. And I've interviewed a parent who has had a child go missing and never recovered the child. It's like, there's that feeling of loss. And as years go by, you don't lose hope, but you start to get not comfortable, but you find a way of getting up every day and getting through a day, even though you're dealing with such torturous pain. And then to have this come up, and it's kind of like, all the hope that you had.
So Jen is saying
and
Catholic. So Jen is saying Catholic Church has been involved in so many evil things in history, and many don't believe it. Read The Recovering Catholic, a great book.
I
And
will.
also, Christy is saying they're called orphan schools in the States.
Yeah, that could be why we can't go further with her history. And that's my great grandmother. We can't.
Yep.
She killed herself. She hung herself.
Oh, my condolences.
Years later. Yeah. She was a very troubled woman.
Oh, sorry to hear.
Yeah.
So
I wonder.
Yeah. We are going to continue on this story for as long as it takes, and justifiably so, because again, I don't know the media's. It'll be very interesting to see what happens when it starts bubbling up in the US.
We would like to think that they would do that, but it seems like these QAnonymous people who've been raging on forever about missing kids and missing pedophile, all of this stuff, you'd think this would be something they would actually take in and show initiative for whatever. But this is like almost like the heavens or Mother Universe is revealing all of our hypocrisies, all of them. Everything is being unveiled. And what you believed yesterday, you may not believe tomorrow. It's so bizarre to me, because this is the prime situation of like religion, too much, the Catholics. How much are they going to keep getting a pass? Okay, maybe not. They're not all like that. But it almost seems like God is just opening up the light in cobwebs of darkness, utter darkness, and people are freaking out because you're taking away everything they once believed. That's kind of what's happening. It's like, holy, now, we've known about this, but I hope they I hope they care, but it worries me, because it worries me that Americans won't really address it the way they should. They didn't care about Rwanda. They don't care about African children. I mean, there's only a select few of people that are actively doing something. Let's be honest. It doesn't stop anyone's day when they know that somebody's head was being played as a soccer ball. It doesn't ruin their day. It's just
last week we talked about the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Think about it. Last week we were talking about the Catholic Church, and they basically told the Southern Black. we're talking about the Catholic Church, but also the Baptist Convention, and how they told the Black ones that they wanted them out, basically, and they're like, "Oh no, we're going to stay."
It's just their refusal.
It's ridiculous.
Their willfulness to not change is unbelievable. Yeah. This has been going on since Phil Donahue, we talked about. I remember all this stuff. There were many Catholics that wanted things changed. The only damn thing they've changed was the service, the Mass from Latin to like being in English. That's all I think they've ever freaking done in a long time. And, I don't know. This is heartbreaking. Just heartbreaking.
I think if Jill says, Phil Donahue a third time, she can start spitting fire.
So
it's on my mind today. I don't know why.
Christy is saying that unfortunately, Jill, the unfortunate loss of your grandmother is a common story.
Oh, really?
Yes. And also Chris is saying, so sorry about your great grandmother. So he's expressing condolences.
Yes, like my mother found her and she was only 7. It was like,
oh, wow.
Yeah. And her 2 brothers, and they all kind of had, it was crazy. And she married, it was really, really sad. Thanks for, so they were called orphan schools here. That makes, and the school burnt down, so we can't find her records. We were told.
And that's the very, it's very.
And the child that she had, our Jones is not a real last name, because she ended up marrying a preacher, and he raised her son that she already had. And that was my mom's dad. And he was super tall, straight black hair. And he had a hard life too, because raising somebody else's child, not all men are all that. He just depleted him, died young. A lot of drinkers in my family. Wow.
All right. Yeah. And Christy's saying, yes, unfortunately, very common. And that's the whole situation. That's this whole situation, Jill.
That's what I was going to say. Is I have a feeling
it gives me chills.
Well, I have a feeling that, not even a feeling, we know that this is going to start happening here in the United States. They're going to start looking, and all of a sudden records are going to go missing. It's not that they don't exist, because just like with slave records, they kept very good records whenever they could make a buck on a human being. They kept very good records. So we know that they have records. We know the records aren't lost, but that's what they're going to tell families.
Mm-hmm.
And Christy is saying intergenerational trauma.
Yeah, we've had it. Crazy stuff in my family on that side. Crazy.
Well, after that, let's get to our cockroach for this episode. And he's been the hot topic at the beginning, so we have to end off with him. In push against indoctrination, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida mandates surveys of Florida college students' beliefs. What?
This is all Aisha, because you're a college,
I mean,
genius,
this is his whole thing. And this is the whole thing with Republicans. They think that anyone who goes to college, mind you, a bunch of them are college graduates. They think that they're being indoctrinated by colleges. So if you go to a liberal arts college, you're being considered indoctrinated. And so some of them think state schools are better. However, most of them are graduates of Ivy League schools, which are by virtue liberal arts institutions.
Sure.
But the thinking tends to be that colleges are now being indoctrinated. Students are now being indoctrinated. As a professor, one of the things that I enjoyed was being able to be assigned a course, pick my own readings, design my own syllabus, and how I was going to teach that course, and what I was going to teach within that course, designing the course, as long as it kept up with the description that was given in the student handbook, the student course catalog. I was free to take that course and make it mine and teach the very things and kind of keep up with the times, and also include some very critical readings. Governors like DeSantis, and you have these school boards with people who believe like DeSantis does, think that this is indoctrination, and that they are strongly against this. And this right here is the extension of that. Oh, we don't want CRT, critical race theory, taught in K through 12 schools. This is them trying to extend that arm beyond what they can actually mandate, because when it comes to colleges and universities, you got to remember those children, the majority of them who start college are 18. And so you can't, at that point, their parents are no longer involved in their education. You, as an instructor, you cannot talk to their parents. They are legal adults. You can't give their parents any information. All their parents can get is what the kids give them. And so this is another, bite at that apple of, oh, we want, to teach our kids this. We don't want to teach them that. So in other words, we want to teach them the white history, not the right history. And that's what he's doing. And by asking, requiring, mandating a survey of college beliefs and then keeping it in a student file, not only creates that kind of atmosphere, but what happens if you hire a counselor or a professor who doesn't believe what that student does and sends a recommendation for graduate school for that student, and the student has no idea that the professor is leaning one way or the other? like for example, if it's a math professor, they're teaching you numbers, right? They get this survey on you, and you ask your math professor to write you this letter of recommendation because you're getting A's in like quantum theory or some kind of qualitative subject, and you get a negative letter of recommendation. You don't know until after, because you waive your right to the letter of recommendation. And when you go back to find out from the college, how come I didn't get in? You're going to find that. And you're going to learn then and draw the dots that this professor here gave me a negative recommendation based on a survey of my beliefs, not my actual ability.
Right.
And so you're impacting people's lives. But not only that, mandating a survey. Here there are questions. Do you do this survey every year? Because some people might change their beliefs over time. It's like
it's true. You do.
It's not the census. Okay, you're not asking objective information. You're asking subjective information. And then here's the other question: who designs this survey so that it is as objective as it can be? Well, if the governor is going to be in any part of who designs, if we know the Florida political establishment is going to have anything, we know that Republicans are going to be highly involved, and so that right off the bat doesn't make the survey objective, and then it's mandated. There are certain things that they're going to ask on this survey that
it's political,
above and beyond. It's all political. It goes above and beyond.
And he said it's intellectual diversity.
Right. They're asking religious views. They're asking sexual orientation, and they're not leaving any questions for I don't know, decline to ask. They're making people use this choice, and it's going to be in their permanent record if they attend a college and university there. Now, here's the thing: you might end up. Florida might come to bite them in the butt, where people won't want to attend college and university in Florida. Remember, there are quite a few HBCUs in Florida. There's Bethune-Cookman, there is FAMU, and there's a ton of others. So don't forget, that it is a state requirement. He's going to make it a state requirement of all colleges and universities. He hasn't specified if it's just state run.
I think that this is ridiculous, and I think it's against the Constitution what he's asking, and I would expect, because this guy has gone completely pazzo. I'm expecting him to go out and sign Kiss My Behind Day as a law, because this man has lost his mind. That is your right to privacy and your right to religious freedom. And I'm sorry, let me tell you something. Half of those kids will be giving some crazy answers, number one. Only maybe more than half. But furthermore, this is what I'm talking about. Our DOJ, every day they need a spokesman who comes out and says, that ain't right. We're going to check you later. Yeah. I just think they need something like that. They just need a girl who comes out and goes, huh?
I also only told half the story. The other part of it is that he's also mandating this survey, not just for college student beliefs, he's mandating it for staff and faculty. And so he's putting parameters on what you can and cannot teach in your own classroom. One of the things that professors love about the fact that they are professors is that they have latitude when it comes to teaching their subjects. If you're teaching a subject, that's a STEM subject, you don't have as much latitude. However, you do have some latitude when it comes to the whys and hows you teach things. For example, I've taught people statistics and how to think of statistics as human beings, individuals in situations, and mass groups in situations versus thinking of the actual numbers. and how to, rearrange their thinking. People who are abstract thinkers like that, how to take something like that. So they're putting parameters on what instructors can do. And that right there is just you're going to see a lot of professors just up and leave Florida. And then what happens when you have an unusually large pool of students and not enough instructors to teach them? Well, guess what? You're going to start recruiting from any and everywhere. You're going to start recruiting the bottom of the barrel, and you're going to start putting out a breed of professional that is unprepared, unqualified, unskilled, and they don't have the critical thinking skills that are necessary.
But you know
for what they do.
You do know that DeSantis has been accused of creating a little Moscow himself, in the sense of he and Trump have created more anchor babies from Russia, enough to infiltrate our country going forward. You think the Cold War was cold. This will be freezing. Blitz. This is their new strategy. So if they remove the certain students and get what they want in there, and the faculty and the teachings that they want, because the saddest part is that we have people who would rather our children learn a curriculum more like Russia than the ones that our country, which espouses diversity and freedom and all the things that our country has aspired to. They ain't fooling nobody. I know exactly what they're doing. And it's time to shut that down. So he's a cockroach.
Yeah. And he's like, I mean, you know how they say
somebody better get some raid or get some heavy ass shoes.
Multiply. Cockroaches breed and multiply. They're gonna be if this passes, there are going to be a bunch of them throughout the South, throughout the Midwest, any state that can get through with
it's a state that didn't want was upset over a mandate of Obamacare, didn't get all that upset over Parkland and the shooting, doesn't really give a. I'm telling you, the people in Florida, iffy. I'm a little bit out on the fence.
There's going to be more cockroaches to come.
Because the people, if you live there and you know you're okay, you got some friends, you need to, you got to change that. Sorry for my language. You have to. There's just something wrong with them. Something wrong. Something very, very wrong.
I say this, it won't happen in my state because
don't be so sure. They're doing is mobilizing.
The university owns the state. If they control the entire medical system that employs like most of the people in the state, they're not doing it. This is what
I just feel like Trump and his cronies get on a Zoom call every month and check in about which part of the boat they're chipping away at. And I feel like everybody is assigned a division to chip away and to implement people. And I feel that it's so mobilized and so organized that the only way to get in there is to infiltrate them and have politicians that seemingly might have their views, but flip back. I don't know any other way. Or even having friends and people that just rat them out. There's just no other way.
Well, remember how
it's more of infiltration. Huh?
Remember how they had the COINTELPRO in the 1970s where Hoover was infiltrating all of the organizations like the American Indian Associate group, the group, the Black Panthers, and what was the Asian American group? All of the groups that were going for social change, all the minority groups, right? That's what they need to do, and they had people
we need to do that.
They had people who would infiltrate each of those groups, who were people who were of that particular group of people.
Where do we start?
We need to do it on the reverse.
It's true, but we've even got people who have infiltrated the FBI, the CIA. They're not all who they appear to be anyway. That unfortunately, that's where we are within our own government. And the fact that I'm even saying this
Well, that's how
Makes
you
me so
recruit.
sad. It makes me so sad because that's not America. It's really sad.
But
It's
remember,
really
those
sad.
people for the COINTELPRO were never FBI agents that were infiltrating. They were always
Yeah, but I'm talking about
people.
our law enforcement as white supremacists. Our
Yeah,
some of our
exactly.
the
That's why
reason
you wouldn't
you
use
can't
them.
you can't tell me that the FBI can't find all these people. We should have had all of them rounded up from the insurrection. But you know why we haven't? Because we've got people there who are in on it and are stumbling around like, oh, I don't know, I didn't see her. I swear to God, I still think Lauren Boebert's mother was in there. And then y'all can't tell me otherwise. That bee was at that insurrection. But we have people stalling and screwing up all of this stuff on purpose, deliberately. And they need to watch them. They need to watch all of them. The question is, who's doing the watching?
Who's watching?
On that note, we are going to close off this epic conversation, ladies. 2 last comments we got. Chris saying, DeSantis, yet another feeble-minded attempt to exert control over people. He needs to fall into the sea and be consumed by a carnivorous manatee. Does his idiocy know no bounds?
No.
And then on a conciliatory note, Christy says, Jill, when this becomes big down there, please be gentle with your spirit. The more we are really the more we are really learning our families aren't so crazy, just very damaged spirits. And it's weighing heavy on all families as we're learning so much at once. We didn't even know what they went through.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Christy.
So that is our last comment of the night. Another epic conversation. Thanks, everyone who made it epic tonight. I mean, wow. Like, Christy, thank you. Chris, thank you. Real Django, thank you. Cinema, thank you. Birdie Lynn, Black Beauty. Birdie Lynn says she's gonna be back. She's coming back for next week, which will be very nice. Chris is saying, Dr. Aisha, Jill, as always, thank you. Bless you all. Right back at you, sir. Right back at you. So before we close down shop
Thanks,
for the
Betty Rubble.
Before we close up shop tonight, as always, the ladies are going to share with us where they can be reached at. So first up, we're going to go to Jill Jones.
I'm at Jill D. Jones on Twitter.
Very nice. And next up, Aisha Staggers.
Aisha Staggers on Twitter, and I will be broadcasting next week from South Carolina.
Oh, yes, that's right.
I thought you were there this week.
Okay, excellent.
No, I leave next Saturday.
Cool.
Okay, all right. Well, I am Dr. Vibe, and the best way to get a hold of me is at my website, thedrvibeshow.com. I'd like to thank everyone who watched this live or who will watch it on the replay or listen to it on the replay. It's appreciated and not taken for granted. As always, I like to close out my conversations with this. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions and aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. And as always, remember to give yourselves grace. God bless. Peace to you all. Keep the faith, and we'll see you soon. Take care.